Welcome, everybody. Happy Sunday. My name is Kate LoConti Alcocer, and I'm the Executive Artistic Director at Irish Classical. Um, Today is our final day of C-Marks, which is sad. We just blew through this 3-week run so quickly. Time is such an interesting construct these days, and we hope that everybody was able to check it out. If you are watching today's talkback as a preview, you have until 11:59:59 today to check it out, which means that you would need to start the movie at about 9 o'clock to see it before the viewing time is over. But we're really happy to see a good group here. We've had 3 successful talkbacks previously to this one, and maybe some of you have tuned in. I see some familiar faces and names. So we're happy to have everybody today. This is a very informal setup. We are recording, so we'll put all of the talkbacks on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to go back and check them out. And we will meet for 20, 30 minutes, and hopefully some great questions will come out. Very informal. Go ahead and type your questions into the chat box, and I will read them from the chat box. Today, I am very, very excited to introduce most of our design team, actually, of C-Marks. So we have, let's see, everybody's got their videos on. We have David Dwyer, who is our set designer and has designed many, many productions at Irish Classical. We have Roy Walker, who is our props designer for C-Marks. He is also a sound designer and has done many productions around town. We have Susan Drozd, who is our resident hair and makeup designer. So you have seen all of her fabulous wigs, you've seen her fascinators, you've seen her fun Moliere white face makeup, the many, many designs on the ICTC stage. And she was our hair and makeup designer for C-Marks. And we have Vivian Bello, who did our costumes for C-Marks. She has also done a whole slew of costume design for Irish, as well as our wardrobe manager for, gosh, I want to say decades at this point. It's been a really long time. So we have worked with Viv for many, many years. So, and last but certainly never least, we have Greg Natale. Don't let him fool you. It says Cassie Cameron because he's on our ICTC account. Greg is our production manager. He is our technical director, and he oversaw the kind of the liaison between ICTC and Pan American for C-Marks. So between the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us, we can answer pretty much any question that you might have about our historic digital production. So welcome all, and we're happy to see everybody. I'm going to kick.
Sal's online too for any film technical questions too.
That's right, Salvatore Natale, who's hiding behind his name here. He worked on the ICTC and the Pan American crew, really behind the camera. So any questions that you might have about the film production aspect, Sal can answer them. So thank you and welcome everybody. I am going to kick us off with a question to the group. This was a new foray for everyone involved here. How did you find designing for film or our kind of hybrid medium film theater different than just your basic production at ICTC? Who'd like to kick off?
I can start.
Okay, Susan.
Well, we were not just, it wasn't just like going from live theater at the Irish to film at the Irish. It was all, of course, through the veil of this pandemic that we're experiencing. So where I would normally say it's just, it's a different, your understanding of time is completely different on a film than it is for theater. I would also say your thought on how Tech Week works is completely different. And normally what happens in my realm is I get everybody ready, I get them to the point of opening, and then after opening, I say goodbye and like let it fly, and there it goes. Where it would normally be that way, I guess in a film, except we also did it like masked up, cloaked up, 6 distance, only the people in the room that needed to be in the room. I normally always wash my hands a billion times when I'm working with actors. This was a billion times 2. So there was like that distance because my role is very intimate with the actors. And yet we were able to find interesting intimacy in the film because of that distance and of that staying safe. Vivian and myself actually got to be in a little pod with the actors. And it felt like, even though Vivian and I weren't on stage, we felt like we were on stage every second with them because we were their people. So we were with them the whole time. And for the first time ever, Kristen Tripp Kelly was happy because I did her hair for every single day. So normally I teach her. She looks at me like I'm crazy because I ask her to do things that she normally doesn't do with her hair, and then I leave. This time she had this moment where she went, "Oh, you're going to be here the entire run of this show?" And I said, "Yes, I am." So I was there to take care of her and Chris throughout the entire process, which was pretty cool.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Susan. Other designers, David, I'm thinking about you in our Celtic Connections episode. You were mentioning that you had also an epiphany moment where you were able to like design full scope in the space rather than cutting it down to 32 inches or however.
Right. Yeah, that was a big difference actually designing in the Irish space where everything's in the round usually. Where we have, 32 inches is usually our max height for furniture. You can cheat that a little higher. But I was able to put full-size doors or door frames, full-size windows, and walls and partial walls at least in the space. So that was a little refreshing actually. So to be able to do that and add those, gives you that little bit more as a set designer, getting those other details and kind of things in there. So, yep.
I have to say too, seeing that scope in the space is really arresting, in such a small space, even on film, to see like the height of the door frames. Of course, the kind of time period, it's supposed to look like a music room from 100 years ago. I'm thinking about Timothea's apartment, and to see those door frames and the back of the mantle and stuff, it's really beautiful to see that scope in that space as well.
Yeah, it's nice. I enjoyed this whole process actually. So.
Wonderful. Roy, Viv, any thoughts that you have?
In addition to that, what that allowed the film side to do was they were able to shoot through the back sides of windows twice. They were able, actually 3 times. And even one of the times we got to have an environmental rain fall on an exterior window of Column's Cottage, which we don't ever get to do. So I think there was some wonderful effects that we got to film, looking through really thin mesh, shears, curtains that were, I felt added a lot to the intimacy and the voyeurism of the piece. So I think David's set helped that a lot.
Absolutely. Agreed. I actually love those moments, those voyeuristic moments of, so much of it is like eavesdropping on their conversation, this very private conversation between these two people that they're trying to figure out. And, in last talk back, Travis was talking about that like shifting line between theater and film, where so many times you see the seats and the light fixtures and the ramp, but then those magical film moments of looking behind the shears or the water on the pane. It's really cool to kind of like trick the audience here and there. Viv or Roy, any thoughts that you have?
I felt like I was able to do things I normally don't get to do. So for instance, I think of Kristen coming out in her nightgown. If we were doing the show live, would have been like a 30-second quick change, and she would have not been able to wear what I found this like beautiful vintage nightgown in our warehouse, and I was like, it was perfect. But if we were doing the show live, never would have worked. Like we would have ripped it, wouldn't have been able to change quick enough. So it was fun to kind of get to like have that leeway. And I know Susan was able to like stop and recurl her hair during that time where we would have done any of that. So it was a fun change in that way to get to do things that never happen live.
I don't know, Viv. I have a lot of like support for your quick changes. Having been such a quick change, like you are fast, my friend. I feel you might have been able to do it, but what I love so much, thank you for bringing up that nightgown, is the scallop edge at the bottom. It's one of my favorite shots in the movie when I believe it would probably be Mark's cinematography, right? Sal and Greg that like, chose to zoom in on the scallop of her nightgown, the edge as she's walking. And in the Andrews, like as you're sitting there watching a play, your eye does look at those different details and pick up the design of the set or the costumes or the props, because we are close, but the camera's just that much closer, so you can really see those details.
Hey,
Roy,
Kate, I'm having a problem. Sal just told me he's trying to type in and not entering. So I need a little help here on Zoom to get us open on chat.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just do this. There's not that many of us on the call. So if anybody wants to just, speak up and ask a question, that's totally great.
Okay.
I think when there's a larger group, it's easier to use the chat box. So yeah. So Roy, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Do you have thoughts about it? You're on mute, Roy.
I just figured out the chat too.
I feel like a grandma. Yeah. Going off of the last thing you just said was a perfect segue. Like for my job, besides, I mean, like I sanitize props anyway to like a good point, but I mean, like I was sanitizing the crap out of these things. But I mean, besides that though, there really wasn't a whole lot of difference because if you've ever been to a show at Irish, it's extremely close. So like movie prop is, I mean, like the cameras come in a little bit closer, but for the most part, I mean, like they have to be as good as they were going to be anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Food, the ragu of beef is the one that I think of, right? the ending of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Trimmings, yeah.
Yeah, it's all gotta look good.
There was a close-up on the books on the fireplace with all the envelopes and letters in between it. We never have to worry about titles, but we actually had to worry about like what they said because we knew we would get close enough to read that stuff.
Also one of my favorite shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made all the books custom as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
From scratch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wonderful. Any questions that anyone has? Greg says the chat box is enabled now. So if anyone wants to chat in, or go ahead and just unmute your microphone if you have a question for the group. Karen Howard, were there several takes of the various scenes during the filming like a movie, or was it more live like theater? That's a great question. Sal, or I'm sorry, Greg or Sal, do you want to take that one?
I'll start with it. Maybe Sal could chime in.
Mm-hmm.
What we tried to do for the actors, since they are used to having like autonomy, once a play opens, the director doesn't run down from the house and go, I didn't say to do it that way. So as actors, we're used to like having control over the performance. So what we wanted to do was every first take we did in its entirety. We rolled cameras to see if there's anything we liked, and oftentimes we used stuff from that first take. But we wanted the actors to know that they could throw that one away, not worry about it. If there was a line flub, keep going. If they liked something, great. If they hated something, we could always fix it with another take. So that's how we started each take. And then after that, we started to cut it up, and maybe Sal could talk to that point.
Yeah. The other thing was that the show was filmed with 2 cameras. So just to get different coverage, to like get like 5 to 7 different angles on the same scene, we would have to go back and like do a couple takes. So there was different takes from different scenes, and then sometimes if we wanted to recover and go back on something, we could, if they're like within the same camera placement.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we probably averaged, Sal, maybe around anywhere from 5 to 10 takes on a scene. Is that about right?
Yeah,
maybe a few more on really, really difficult, tricky camera angle ones.
Yeah, there were some that we like, some scenes we only ran through 2 or 3 times, and then some that we were like the opening of the film, for those who haven't seen it, there's a lot going on with the letters writing back and forth, and that was by itself a whole day of just filming.
I think if I remember correctly, Greg and Sal, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of them were requests from the actors, right? Like they wanted to film things in order rather than what you would have on a normal movie set where things are kind of jumping all over.
Yeah, we had a little bit of an ongoing debate coming into it. The filmmaker, Travis Carlson from Pan American Film, wanted to not do the first scene that Sal just talked about because it was literally a half-hour scene, like if you looked at it in a play, uncut. And all of us who have film backgrounds were looking at that going, oh, that's a 12-hour day just by itself. And so we were wanting to start out with a little less intense scene to begin filming with actors who both don't have a lot of film experience. But the actors were insistent and they wanted to get it done in order, and they felt like, well, if we could get that you know, really complicated scene out of the way, that then they felt like they've got the hard one done, and then they can free up to feel lighter, so to speak, about the rest of the production shoot.
Because important to keep in mind too, Chris and Kristen are primarily stage actors. And as a stage actor, we are used to running things in order. Like, we don't run things out of order. We rehearse in order, we run in order, we perform in order. And so to, you know, to kind of flip-flop that, especially considering we only shot in 4 days, that's a huge jump to ask somebody, you know, to do, especially first time out of the gate. So we really tried to make them as comfortable as possible. So we rehearsed for 5 weeks, 4.5 weeks, but still the time that the show shot would have been what would have been our first weekend, and there would have been 3 more weekends of performance. So they only really got to perform it or work on it 4 days, which is just mind-blowing. You know, it's so different than what we're used to doing at the theater.
There's also the emotional aspect to it, Kate, too, from the actor's point of view. There were, you know, some of the scenes were easy, not easy, but they weren't as emotionally demanding as other scenes. And there were like maybe 3 or 4 that were pretty intense for the actors to have to delve into what they had to come up with emotionally. And so on those, we tried as best we could as filmmakers at that moment to give them the fewest amount of takes, so that they didn't have to relive and go through that very emotional process 20 times. And we try to get it down to like 5 or 4 times. You know.
Yeah. Let's go back to the world of design primarily for a second. And again, just an encouragement to type your questions into the chat box if anything comes to mind. For the designers, talking a little bit more about process, I think many of you have worked with Fortunato many times now. Did this feel like a typical collaboration with Fortunato, or were there differences because it was a film? What sort of similarities and differences were there conceptually? And then there's one.
I would say there was no difference. Fortune is Fortune. Like, he wants it to be perfect no matter what. So it's gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I would second that as well, that, you know, it was a very, very similar process working with Fortune, but yeah, there was a little higher expectation on it, I think, on all of us throughout this process, that we get it right, because, you know, it's gonna be out there forever. So yeah, so it was a good process.
Yeah, is that what that stress was?
I was going to say it felt pretty much the same, but almost on my end, it felt like having a really relaxed Fortune for my department. I've worked with him so many times now that he just does this really like sweet kind thing where he's like, I really want this one moment. And I go, okay, well, talk to me about it. And he's like, do you think, you know, and then one of the moments that he really wanted was when Chris and Kristen are, they're in the bedroom and Chris takes her hair down. And I was like, we could totally make that happen. And I think twice, because it was so important to him, he would just like pull me aside. He's like, are we gonna get that moment? And I was like, just wait for it, Fortune. We got it, I promise. And we really worked it out. I mean, we worked it out backstage. I explained to the actors what he was looking for. It was almost like hairography, because in order for Kristen to be able to survive, you wouldn't think that we have to think about this, but in order for Kristen to be able to survive the scene, which we called backstage of the drunk scene, in order for her to survive it with her hair styled more relaxed than it is any other time, we thought she was going out to have a good time. Instead of having her severe part, we were going to pile it up in a bun and put it up there, but we wanted it easy to take down. But because she falls on the floor, she rolls over, she does these things, if I just put one stick in there, it would have fallen out. So we had to do a hidden other clip in, and I had to teach Chris that when he had to do it, he couldn't look like he was doing mechanics. He had to, as seductively as possible, grab the stick, grab the other clip. I mean, let's just who doesn't love a man who knows how to take bobby pins out of your hair? He took it down, and she was able to do it. And then, like, the first 3 takes, I would run in and I go, you can't let her look like a monster when it comes down. And he's like, what do you want me to do? I got the pins out, like you said. I go, take the pins out, but make sure she looks, come on. And so he's like, okay. So then his next look was to just go for it. And I think in the moment that we ended up with the shot we went for, And seeing it on film, she looked like she felt like she was being taken care of, that she was beautiful, that he had loved her, and Fortune got his look, and I was really happy to help make that magic happen.
Wonderful. That's such a memorable moment. And it helps that Chris is a hairstylist, like in his real life. So he like knows how to work a bobby pin. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful symbiosis of designer, director, and actor for that moment. Lovely. So just a couple things in our chat box now. Donna, why don't you stay on the call for a second? You have a question just about connecting. So when we're done with the talk back and everybody's clicking off, go ahead and stay on the call and we can help you with that. Sal has a question to the group, actually, to the designers. For the designers who were on set, how was the shoot days different than a regular play day within your department? Question. So this is maybe for Susan and Viv more.
I'll let Viv go first.
I felt like it was a walk in the park compared to normally running wardrobe, personally, pandemic aside. But I feel like normally as a designer, I get everything done, and then I jump into running wardrobe where I'm like thinking like, okay, I'm gonna meet this actor by the water fountain and we'll change there, and then I meet someone else in the hallway by the windows and we'll change there, and I'm running around with baskets and different clothes where I got to like, sure, come on back and we'll change. We've got a half an hour break. So I loved the difference. I'm obviously eager to jump back in on wardrobe, but it was a nice break of kind of getting to take our time and make sure everything is perfect before I just push people out on the stage like I normally do.
I was going to say, I feel like for us doing our first film as a company, we were given like gifts from heaven by having Chris and Kristen. Like, it wasn't like we were doing Game of Thrones where there's 75 billion actors who all need their face done all the time and fixed and changed, and like in books upon books of like design Bibles where you're referencing constantly. The gift was play, the gift was the setting, the gift was the actors. Even in a pandemic, all of those were still gifts because we were literally in a 4 days, full hours with these actors who were grateful and also knew us enough that if they needed to take their own time, they could ignore us. Our feelings would not be hurt. We knew not to get in their way. It was like, it was a walk in the park comparative to if you told me we had a 27-person cast and we only had 4 days to make them all look amazing. I think I would have gone, oh, let's talk about this.
I think we all would have done that. That's we chose a 2-person play on purpose for many reasons. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
so just a question.
That same regard, though, for since David's here too, he designed a set that it had some big components in it, but once we learned how to manipulate them and how to use dollies with wheels, we could move the set pieces on and off pretty quickly. And we actually got very efficient at it because, then when you're doing multiple takes of a scene, you have to move, a whole house apartment. We got it down to like 5 minutes at a time, completely set dressed and with the props in the right places for multiple takes. So the run crew and our stage manager, Michelle Eisen, were amazing at getting all that done because it seems like there's a lot of time between scenes or takes, and sometimes it's 5 or 10 minutes, and in the theater we're used to 30 seconds. The whole set has to be changed in 30 to 45 seconds. We couldn't have done that with this, so we needed the 5 minutes, but even 5 minutes for what was there was pretty amazing, and to drop it in the right place each time was great. I think it all worked really well, and we had people who would just kill themselves to make everything happen.
To add to that, we were lucky that we know each other as a company well enough that if Greg was in crunch time and he'd be like, Suze, I need this in 2 minutes, he knew he could trust that I would do it in 2 minutes. Or Michelle would come back and she's like, how much time do you need? And I'm like, I need 5. And I go, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, because I know you'll keep it to 5. I think if we were all brand new coming in, we wouldn't know our boundaries. We wouldn't know how to, and like Viv and I have worked together for forever. And so we were able to have that. And I think Fortune knew that too.
Yep. Such a good point. We talked a lot about that in pre-production. Greg can attest to this. Like we knew we were jumping into this new territory. We didn't have a lot of time to make it happen. It was a decision that was made because of the pandemic. And so we made sure that our company and our team was airtight. And that's along with the collaboration of Pan American. We had never worked with them before. So we just really made sure that, like, from every single angle, we were able to work together in the way that we needed to. And that's one of the things that I think made this all so successful, is that we were able to trust each other and say, I don't know what I'm doing, can you help me? Or how can I help you? You know, and just kind of like make it happen.
You know, Kate, one of the elements we're not discussing because we don't have the designer here with us is lighting, which was
yes, thank you.
Critical
Yep.
for filming. And so Jason Clark, our lighting designer, had never done work for film before. So he was in a little bit of a high panic state. And the two cameramen, Travis and Mark, had never worked under theatrical lights before and didn't understand how that looked. So we did 2 days of, like, I don't know, 5-6 hours of testing with cameras, letting Jason run up and change things in the booth and coming back down. And so there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of testing and then to shine the light through David's set, you know, in order to see how that affected things. It took a lot of work to get the lighting to a place that still felt theatrical. You know, theatrical light tends to be a little more intense, but at a place where the cameras could work with it, and it felt right to the cinematographer.
You know, Greg, I'm so glad you brought up the lighting design. Jason Clark was our lighting designer. It's just gorgeous. You know, it really just sets the tone, and it changes so much between Timothea and Column's settings as well. The Wednesday Afternoon Club looks totally different. Like, I really feel that all of the design elements work so well together in this production. Everybody just works so incredibly well to create this world of Sea Marks. I think we're I'm going to ask one more question here, just because I'm curious. For all of the designers, were there things that you had in your mind that then seeing them on film, like, really were realized or enhanced? Like, what were some of your biggest win moments that you were like, oh, I'm proud of the way that looks? Everything's so evocative and visual in the film. I just wonder if there's one thing that or somebody else's design moment maybe.
I can start. I love looking at different textures of clothing together and seeing, like, how you noticed the scalloping on the nightgown, seeing the way they zoomed in on certain costume pieces gave me chills, because that's something the audience doesn't ever get to see, or you hope that they notice it, but you don't know because there's so much happening. You don't think that they're going to take it all in that way, where seeing the way that they were able to, like, really focus in on, like, the sweaters and the different lace and things like that, it was amazing.
I have a corny one. I liked, so there was zoom-ins on, like, the letters that were written. All of the letters that Colin wrote are my handwriting. And then all of the letters by Timothea are my girlfriend's. So it was just, like, kind of cute to see that. I was like, oh, it's like our notes.
That's sweet.
Except not as good. Yeah, it was kind of cute.
You know,
It's just cool to see your work on film also. Always looks more interesting.
Go ahead, David.
I enjoyed on that is as a set designer, I'm often concerned with the big picture and everything, the wide picture, the picture you're seeing all the time. And in film, you know, you have the ability to zoom in and you see smaller pieces. And so I was really enjoyed how things were able to, you know, fit together in smaller pieces like that as well. So it was nice. So.
I love to design in the round because I really like to think of what the hair and makeup looks like in the round. And those who come to Irish for the first time, like actors, when I go, okay, but this has to be tucked here, and they're not aware that everyone will see if it's not. It was exciting for me to watch, like, Kristen turn and be like, oh my God, I'm so glad it took forever. I'm making sure those pins were hidden. But like the antithesis of it is that when a shot was cut mid-scene, and I would see that her curl had fallen or something, but there was no way, because there would be long shots. Do you know what I mean? So I would fix it and let it roll, and they would finish a part it naturally would fall as your hair would naturally fall during a run. And we would fix it for the next full cut, but there was no real way to do those little fixes. And so I would have this moment where I'd be like, oh God, oh, live theater. And I would be like, this is why live theater gives us the okay, because real hair does fall.
Wonderful. I wonder if Greg or Sal has any design moments that, or film moments, Sal, maybe that that you'd like to add to the conversation.
Yeah, it was, again, like we said, everything with these lenses we could see up close as well as far. So it was cool seeing like a whole range from times where it's like the whole stage in a single shot to like a close-up of one of their faces. I think it was cool to highlight a lot of the details and all the work that everyone's put into it. So that was fun on my end, just seeing that myself.
I think off of that, what Sal just said too, is that I think that helped tell the story a lot. And that was Travis and Mark Davies doing that with lens selection and the different focal lengths of the lenses. Sal will be able to talk to this better than I am. But it really can make someone feel very far away and isolated versus very up close and in their face. And I think the thing to me that I most feel proud about in the technical end of it is that it still looks like a play. We see the audience, empty seats. We can, on certain shots, see the theatrical lighting, and we can see the ramps that go off to the different exits. So I think I'm most proud that we hit a pretty good balance of the two worlds meeting. I feel good about that.
I completely agree. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's one of my favorite things about the production. And you know, all of the design working so well together, which I think is, you know, one thing that we love seeing in the theater, but on film, because it's immortalized, it was so successful, all of the different aspects. And the one that we haven't touched on yet is the sound design. Tom McCarr couldn't join us today. He's our resident sound designer at Irish. This feels like a Tom McCarr sound designed production. It is just this gorgeous, subtle, oh my goodness, that like twinkling piano at certain moments, and of course the keening at the beginning and the end to kind of bookend it. And he had gone through many different versions, kind of more for a theatrical feel, and then different versions for, you know, the final version of the film. And just gorgeous design, because you almost don't know it's there, you just feel it. And that's the best aspect of sound design, when it just helps connect the emotions. So just want to give a little shout out to Tom.
Kate, so Tom was working on, like you said, a different sound design, primarily in the music. The sound effects didn't change. The seagulls and water, and all that all stayed the same. But the music, other than that opening vocal, all changed. Because as we got done with the first rough edit, and then we're starting the second edit, we sent that to Tom, and Fortunato, the director, said, it's different now. It's not a play anymore, and it's not a movie. It's more of a movie than a play. So the two of them had to have a conversation, and Tom, to his benefit, was like, you know what, this is not the play. And I understand that. And he was, you know, willing in a very short amount of time, like a matter of like 2 days, completely redo the music sound, and struck a beautiful note, as you said.
Oh, absolutely. And this is back to Susan's point about working with people you trust, you know, and just saying like, we want to adjust this, and he wanted to adjust it, you know, and he's so glad that he did. And it's just a wonderful symbiosis of all of the design aspects working together. So we're at a half an hour now already. So I just want to thank our designers for joining us today, and it's our final closing day of CMARC. So thanks for bringing us through it from the designer's point of view. Marvelous job, everyone. Really, we just love your work. Yeah, I see some claps there. So, yes, absolutely. So thank you very much. And thanks to all the patrons who tuned in today. It's good to see everybody. And stay tuned for our holiday programming coming up. Everything will be announced on Facebook and website and through eBlast. So we appreciate your continued support, and have a good rest of your day, everyone. Spread the word about CMARC's got a couple more hours for the last viewing.
Thanks, friends.
Thanks, everybody.